Welcome to a conversation at the HBOT News Network. It is a pleasure for me today to have a Army veteran with us, Ernie Harrison. Ernie deployed to Iraq, and I think his story is going to resound with other veterans that may have suffered from traumatic brain injuries. And welcome, Ernie, and thank you for coming in to the network.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ed. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So let's maybe start with you. Give us a little bit of background. Where you grew up and what got you involved in the military.
Sure.
And your experience there.
Martin County, which is eastern North Carolina, is where I grew up. A little town called Williamston, and born and raised there all my life. And then when I turned 18, I went to Barton College in Wilson, and with a focus on criminal justice. My goal was to be a state trooper. And did 4 years there and graduated, and ended up getting a job as a housing director. They offered me, I was an RA, and they offered me the job, so I ended up staying, for another year. And with anticipation of going to Highway Patrol, going through the paperwork and all, and then 9/11 happened. So I felt, the calling to go serve the country. And so I joined, I wanted to fight. And I went to the recruiter, and they said, well, you got a college degree and you want to fight. Why don't you go into Special Forces? And I was like, all right, well, what is that? And they said, well, Green Berets, you go in, you go to school for 2 years. And I stopped them right there. I said, look, I've been to school for 16 years. I don't want to go back to school. I want to go fight, So they offered me a Ranger contract. So I went in and Fort Benning, Georgia, where you do most everything. Infantry school, airborne school, Ranger Regiment, actually right on the street from Airborne, so all right there. Ended up washing out of that and ended up at 82nd Airborne. This was in 2003. And I was 82nd maybe 2 months, and we got orders to go to Iraq in September. So we go to the hot spot there. Fallujah is our main destination, and we are, I think, orders for 6 months and ended up getting extended out to about 9. But while we were there, first week, IED goes off, and it wasn't my vehicle, but a guy's, in our unit, hit a pressure pedal landmine and ends up killing one guy, blows another guy's leg off. And so right off the get-go, we knew that, we were in the heat of everything. And But I personally didn't have, I had it around me. I had IEDs going off and that kind of thing, but I wasn't exposed, directly to those things. My head injury came, just all fault of my own, but we came back from a mission about 2 a.m. and I went in and emailed my family, said, hey, everything's good, I'm good. I can't tell you where I am, but just want you to know I'm okay. And as I left, I walked out and I felt a Humvee. How it is in the desert, in the military zone, you don't have any light. So I'm trying to get my eyes adjusted to going back out into the darkness. And I walked down the side of this Humvee, and it's parked beside this old well, abandoned well, 10 foot deep, 10 foot wide, full of bricks, concrete. And the engineers had just put this little tape about knee high around it. And walking down the side of this Humvee, and I ended up slipping and falling head first. So I didn't have any gear on, and I fall head first in this hole and get knocked unconscious. Ended up coming to and couldn't move my fingers or my toes, so I felt like I was paralyzed. And as my faith, I read 91st Psalm every day, it's a soldier psalm. And I called out to God, and I said, I have a sister at home who's paralyzed. She was born with spinal bifida. So my mother takes care of her full time, so I already had her at home, paralyzed. I didn't want to go home that way, so I prayed to either be healed or to be taken, because I didn't want to go home that way. And I tell you, God answers prayers. When I woke up, I was rolling out the top of the hole, and there was no one there to help me. All I can do is give God credit for it, because I don't think I could have done it myself. And there just happened to be a medic who saw me, and I called for help. And anyway, they packaged me up, and then come to find out, nothing was broken. I had some nerve damage in my neck and back, but I had had 6 staples placed into the frontal lobe, and probably had concussion, I'm pretty sure. And how the Army does, they give you some drink water and have motor and drive on, So I did some rehab for about 30 days, and then I was back out on the front lines with heavy gear and that helmet and K-pop, we called it back in the day. But anyway, finished my tour there, came home, and the first jump, in 82nd, airborne, you have to jump so many times a month to receive your airborne pay. So I first jump out, my chute is what he calls cigarette rolled, and it was probably my fault. I don't know how, but anyway, your chute's rolled up, and you're falling dramatically, faster than you're supposed to fall. And they teach you to grab the risers and to kind of like a swing, how it's spun. You pull it and it spins you back out. And I did what I was taught to do, and it finally opened up and deployed fully, but it was tree level. So I was probably 60 feet from the ground when it happened, and I hit the hard ball. So it hit my occipital lobe in the back. So I had a frontal concussion and a rear concussion within 6 months of each other. And so that's when I called home and told my mother I was in the hospital, that I was okay, but I had some other family issues. My sister was, she had some issues. She's on wireless oxygen 24/7, and she wasn't waking up. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't there. So I go home, came home and checked on her, and it took a little while to figure out what was going on, but her concentrator wasn't working properly, so she wasn't getting the oxygen she needed. Her sats were like down in the 70s, and I really thought that she wasn't going to make it. So, and also my father was having some issues with, I think he was in depression, so he was in a rehab trying to get some help. So I had a lot going on that time, and we were 6 months home, supposed to deploy again, and I just couldn't focus on my career, so I ended up getting out on a hardship. But since that time, I've had issues with concentration, not being able to read something, to understand it like I used to, and I'd have to go back and reread, and then I ended up joining the fire service. Didn't have any what I consider post-traumatic stress issues or anything, but I joined the fire service, and going from 0 to 100 miles an hour, putting on heavy gear, going into ideal H environments. After a period of time, one day I woke up, I'd been there maybe a year, and my chest was tight and heavy, and I just couldn't breathe, and I was like, what is going on? And so I was having a panic attack. I always thought they were a joke. I never thought it was serious, but I experienced them for myself and realized that something was wrong. And I went to seek some help with the VA, and come to find out, the lady was like, look, you've had a trigger of what you used to do in Iraq. I'm putting on heavy gear, getting in a vehicle, going 100 miles an hour, going into an isolation environment with hostile people. And fire service wasn't always hostile people, but we were going into people's houses, and I started having nightmares that were putting the two together, that I was going into someone's house to help them. But then when I got in, I had my weapon, and I was pointing at people, and I said, it's time for me to do something different. So I had done that for about, I think it was close to a decade in Greenville. And I had gotten my paramedic that year, and they had opened a position in the county next to me. So it was still helping people, doing paramedicine. I would work 24 hours on and 72 hours off. I had more downtime, and it was closer to home. So it was a good fit, so I ended up doing that. And the call volume wasn't as bad, but you're still getting traumas, a lot of traumas. So over a period of time, with trauma and lack of sleep, my wife's like, you need some help.
Let me ask you this then. And so how we met was your current experience, and you're currently doing hyperbaric oxygen treatments. And so where did you learn about hyperbaric oxygen as a way to deal with all of this PTSD? I guess PTSD, was it ever diagnosed? Or?
Yeah, it was diagnosed as PTSD. I think TBI, PTSD kind of coincide with each other to a certain extent. But so on the way to work, I listened to the radio at times, and Henry Hinton is a guy in East North Carolina. He has a talk show in the morning, and he keeps talking about, I heard him, I think 3 times mention this, Mr. Hooker was the one, I think, had to interview with him one time. I heard him, and then someone else he spoke to him about. So anyway, I called Jim Hooker and talked to him about it. And told him I'd heard on the radio, and he kind of filled me in on what it was all about. And then I got online, and there was actually a podcast that I listened to and watched that the guy, Damien Porter over in Australia, is a friend of mine through a group we're in, and he had a doctor in Florida who was a former Navy diver for like 28 years, and he was talking about the effects of it, and it's helping to cure TBIs and those type of issues. So it happened at a perfect time for me in work, because I was in a place where I needed a change, and I was just, at my wit's end. Mm-hmm. And so it came in at a perfect time.
So where are you now? You started the treatments. Have you noticed any change? Or
I have. I've been here a little over, I think it's my third week. I've got 23 dives in. Everybody, to a certain extent, you're a skeptic, because it seems too simple. Because you're not taking a drug. So you don't. Well, you are, but you don't feel. You're not taking a pill, and you're not doing anything that you think. It's not what we consider natural, but it is. It's the most natural thing you can do, but what we're taught growing up, So I had my doubts, but then after the first week, I went home, and I could tell I was sleeping better. I really wasn't sleeping longer, but my quality of sleep, I wasn't waking up every hour. And then when I was sitting there with my wife, my kids were playing on the floor one day. It was the first weekend at home. My son had done something, and kind of a little temper tantrum. He's 4 years old, and normally I would have gotten upset and sent him to his room and kind of had I just talked to him nice and quietly, eased, and my wife came around. She said, you okay? You okay? And I was like, yeah. She said, she said she could tell a difference in how I was acting, towards the kids, and wasn't as anxious and irritable. And then after the second week, I came home and I told my wife, I was like, man, what's a new smell in the bedroom? She's like, yeah. He says, you haven't been noticing that ever since COVID. I have lost my sense of taste and smell. So my smell has come back, and my taste has come back. I can tell in the last week or so. So something's changed, and things are working like they used to. So I can only contribute that to the HBOT, because I haven't done anything else. So.
Well, one of the things that I like to use is the term textbook.
Yeah.
That's textbook. With this COVID-19, lost of taste and smell,
yeah.
And then the brain fog and some of the other things that I'm sure compounded what was already going on, because as I understand it, that wherever your weaknesses are, it might attack that. But that spike protein, I guess, attacks a certain part of the brain. Mm-hmm. That has a lot to do with your taste and smell. So it's in the brain stem, yeah. I believe. I'm not sure. But.
Well, it definitely helped me. That's one thing I've missed. Is it's the taste of food, and things tasted differently. So yeah, that was huge for me.
Mm-hmm. So that's a common story, and I see that you have the Oxygen Revolution.
I do, yeah. I bought the book and I was reading on that. As a paramedic, I'm interested, fascinated by how that works, because we use oxygen, and sometimes we use it too much, I think, but we don't use it pressurized like you guys use it. So it can, it has its benefits. Airway, breathing, circulation, ABCs will be turning. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, majority of our calls are breathing difficulty. So one of the first things you're going to do is oxygen therapy, in that aspect. So
what is your plan to do? How many treatments are you?
40. I think that the greatest benefit of it is, what for me, is the state's plan that's currently out right now with this bill that they're allowing the veterans to apply and to come, and they're offering our hotel room and our 40 visits that they're covering. I took FMLA from work. So I'm doing just two a day, 5 days a week, for the 4 weeks.
4 weeks, yeah.
And but I think that keeps me focused on doing it, and I don't have any other distractions outside of this, so it helps me to focus on that. So I'm not going home and trying to go to work and then come back here, and it's an hour and a half, 2 hour drive for me too. So it's nice, it's convenient for me to be here, and I think that's a huge impact, which I hope that the state will consider that and maybe fund even more veterans to come do it, because
absolutely. So for the audience here is Durham, North Carolina, right near the
Yeah.
airport. So the clinic is nearby.
Yes, yeah, it's 2 miles away from the hotel, so yes, wonderful.
How's your experience at the clinic? Is it?
Yeah, it's been great. Everybody's very friendly, nice. Everybody knows your name, and they get to know you really quick, and Justin, I talked to him on the phone, and beforehand, he was very helpful about, what I needed to do, where I need to go, how to get there, because I got lost coming here because the GPS says the other side of the building, and I was lost. And Land's been great. I mean, we got jokes with everybody there, and Jackie. Yeah, Jackie's a veteran as well, so she and I have a good banter going back and forth. So
Yeah. So I think Army too. So.
Yes, she's Army. So
go Navy.
Yeah.
So that's great news, and so so looking forward to seeing what, and I think at the clinic they're actually doing the ANM test.
They
did do that. Did you?
Yeah.
So did you do that pre HBOT before you started, and then at 20 did they do it again?
It was 2021.
And then you'll do it again at 40.
Mm-hmm. And I already saw the difference. She showed me the differences from the 20 when we started off, and I mean the anxiety is way down. I mean, just even with the traffic here in Raleigh, I haven't I haven't had road rage yet or anything. I mean, usually I would probably have little anger issues when it comes to driving, but being so close, it's very convenient to the hotel and all. It's been nice, but yeah.
Well, again, thanks for coming in, and thanks for your service, and
thank you.
Appreciate hearing about this, and look forward to hearing more. When you complete it and seeing that A&M test. I know they're I think at this point they're trying to collect maybe 40 veterans that are suffering from PTSD.
Yeah.
Pull together a report, get back to the state to try and increase the funding so that we can get to a larger group, because the need is very clear.
Yeah, I mean, here in North Carolina, I mean, we have so many veterans that are here in the state, and they love North Carolina, they want to stay, and this is a great benefit for them. And I hope that it spreads out, because first responders are a huge community out there. I mean, we've been hit hard by the pandemic, just overworked, and a lot of people have left, and so fire, police, EMS, nurses can all benefit, I think, from this program.
So one of the in the book you're reading, and my discussions with Dr. Harch, because he was here and we interviewed him, and so from discussions with him and other HBOT doctors, I feel comfortable saying this, being a structural engineer. I did take biology. I took biology in high school, and then again at the Naval Academy. So I understand the basics, right? So you get a TBI, especially that first one sounds, very bad. Probably we're getting other ones with if the IEDs were going off anywhere near you, your brain's getting pounded too. If you played a sport, any sports, almost all sports. I think in Wake County, there's a statistic of 3,000 concussions with adolescents every year in just Wake County. So nationwide, I think that number's closer to 3 million adolescents. So, just being a guy playing sports, even the girls, playing volleyball and some of the other sports that the girls are in, is collective. Like it's, and then you fall down that pit. Now you've had a major traumatic brain injury. It's just compounding that. So what that does is that triggers this inflammatory response. So you're getting inflammation, and the reperfusion injury, which is actually the injury after the injury, creates this inflammatory response. Okay, so then having a hard time focusing, you got headaches, you got all these symptoms. You're ushered out for 30 days, and you're given time to heal it. And time is the only thing that anyone is really aware of that heals those brain injuries. And then what happens is you start recognizing the fact that you have a harder time focusing. What that does is that brings in stress. Stress is another cause for inflammation. And so there's this cascading, thing going on there. People don't realize that TBI, as you mentioned earlier, there's so much proof out there that it triggers this PTSD and this continuing impact of inflammation. And so when you look at that, and you apply hyperbaric oxygen, which is without a doubt the most powerful anti-inflammatory, and as I think you'll appreciate, it's been around since the second day. Okay. Atmosphere and oxygen arrived on the scene, and you can read that in Genesis. And so this most powerful anti-inflammatory regulates 40% of your genes. And what are the genes it regulates? Are the anti-inflammatory genes are upregulated, your inflammatory genes are downregulated, and all these reparative, regenerative genes that are creating, they're creating new connections in your brain. They're creating new blood vessels, and so there's this huge benefit that actually can bring you back to where you were and normal, reconnecting everything and growing new. And so that's how I see it. That's how I understand it. And so I think with the 40, you decide, where are you? Are you back where you were? And then if you need more, because a lot of people ask, how many do I need? For me, that answer has always been, after experiencing it, is continue if you're getting, continued improvement. Stop when you plateau. If you feel yourself slipping back, get some more. And so continue to fix it. And once it's fixed, it's fixed. Then you may come back for other reasons and any type of inflammatory condition you have. And I think about this often is that some really bright people out there have had conversations with me about we all die of inflammation. And so when you think about that, and you look at all the indications, all the diseases, all the responses that you as a paramedic are called on, there is an inflammatory response going on there, and also all the diseases that exist out there are somehow started, caused, worsened by inflammation. Inflammation is a major component. So a lot of people would benefit from this. So I take you now to the warfighter on the war front with all of the injuries that they face, not just the traumatic brain injuries, but lacerations, cuts, IEDs going off, people losing limbs. What would it do if you just had the ability to even reconnect a limb in the field, in a hyperbaric chamber, giving oxygen to that area, burns, the reduction in scarring, the ability to heal from all these things. I mean, we should have this deployed with any warfighter, that it's right there and it's available, and even put a surgical unit in the hyperbaric chamber, and a lot of people wouldn't know this, but in the 50s, when you did open heart surgery, the operating rooms were hyperbaric chambers. So they had solid steel walls where they pressurized the room you were in because they learned that they could stop the heart for, I think it was up to 29 minutes in that pressure and in that environment. So with the patient breathing oxygen under pressure, they could stop the heart because they got all that oxygen into the plasma. And so once they came up with the machine that mixed oxygen inside the blood, that they basically put in doors and no longer pressurized the operating rooms. So wouldn't it be amazing if we could do that for the warfighter or for every single person that you pick up?
Yeah.
What if your ambulance was a hyperbaric chamber and someone's had a stroke? You can get oxygen to the brain within minutes of a stroke, no damage to the brain. And so all this has been documented, and I say it's rather textbook. So
yeah, everybody's not as fortunate to live as close to Duke, Carolina, and a hospital. I mean, I got people who live in Belhaven and Bath and Hyde County. I mean, and you're looking at a 45-minute transport to the hospital. Yeah. So yeah, if you had something like that immediately, that would definitely be a huge benefit. People with heart issues or having a heart attack, or just oxygen. It helps in situations. People have AFib. Oxygen a lot of times helps in that area. I mean, so.
Well, in the 90s, the American Heart Association endorsed hyperbaric oxygen for healing hearts after heart attacks in 1/3 of the time, completely. And so you can't find that anymore. You have to go to the Wayback Engine in the internet to see it, okay? Because it's for some reason they buried it. Like, why?
So my first introduction to hyperbaric, my sister, I told you, she's spinal bifida handicapped, she has a bed sore. So that's something that, they started with wound vacs and all that. And she wasn't, I don't know why she's not a candidate. She hasn't used the hyperbaric chamber, but they have one at the wound clinic. So that's where my first introduction to that was, and I also go to church with a guy who works there.
Did they do it in the wound clinic? They did the hyperbarics?
They do it there, but they didn't do it for her. So I don't know if that's a Medicare issue or what, but I don't know. She had to have a certain criteria to meet.
Is she non-ambulatory? She doesn't
not ambulatory at all, yeah.
So she has a handicapped vehicle? What about, is she all there mentally?
She has childlike mentality. She has a shunt, and also she had hydrocephalus when she was born, so that caused a little bit of brain damage, but.
Yeah, so clearly it's going to help her to some extent, especially with the non-healing wounds, but the brain as well. And we see and hear stories about Vietnam veterans that had tremendous brain injuries in that war because there were bombs going off everywhere, and it was a very traumatizing environment for many of them, and so even after 40 years, coming in and getting 40 hyperbaric treatments completely changed their lives. I mean, you basically see them extremely emotional about what it's done for them, So getting it at a younger age like yourself and not waiting till it's that long, I think, helps a lot too.
Yeah, I think people maybe not quite understand, the process of it, all we're doing, but that you're basically forcing 100% oxygen into the cells of the body. Because we breathe in 20% oxygen normally in the atmosphere. So you're breathing 100% oxygen, which oxygen that goes to the red blood cells, which carries, red blood cells carry oxygen and nutrients to the areas of the body that need healing and need those nutrients. So, it's a simple, but you're doing it under pressure. There's nothing. That's what I like about it. It's holistic. There's no pill to take. There's really I don't have any side effects, that I have to worry about. I'm sure there. Now, are there any contraindications that people can't use?
Well, so to add to what you just said about, so the hemoglobin will hold, up to 99, 100% oxygen. You're probably in the 90s. Most people are in the upper 90s if they're healthy. When you put pure oxygen under pressure, then it drives oxygen into your blood plasma, which is generally in the 1% range, up to fully saturated. So you're saturating now, which is many times more oxygen. But the main benefit there is the plasma will go to places where hemoglobin is not getting to. Like, for example, if there's a stroke, there's a blockage, hemoglobin's not getting delivered, and so oxygen's not getting delivered to the cells in the brain. And so what the plasma is doing is bypassing that. It's the liquid around it. So the plasma is circulating as well. So you're able to bypass the clot and get that to the affected area. So it's getting the oxygen so you don't have the permanent damage. Anti-inflammatory kicks in, and so that helps long-term, deal with the clot and all the other things that are going on. Reperfusion injury is minimized because of that major anti-inflammatory. So what are the contraindications? One of them that's brought up often is someone who's extremely claustrophobic. And so fortunately, some of the multi-chambers are they're like a plane. You get in there and you're sitting in a chair, and if there's a movie or something you can focus on, you're not really aware that it's, that you're in a plane. So if you can fly a plane or you can get in an elevator, chances are you can get into the multi-chambers. The other thing is the barotrauma. So if you can't clear your ears, you can basically rupture the eardrum. And so the important thing there is that patients are generally educated on that, to raise their hand and say, hey, my ears are not clearing. Because once you clear your ears at about 8 foot of depth, because I think for the 2 atmospheres, they go to about 33 feet. But once you can clear those ears, the ears can clear. So that somebody might have to work it, but they can clear their ears. And so outside of those things, very, very rare cases, you can have too much oxygen, and any medical facility providing hyperbaric oxygen doesn't go there. It's like drowning from drinking too much water. I like to use that analogy. It's not exact or precise, but it's like you can avoid it. You don't do that. You don't keep drinking when you don't feel like it. And so even if people have too much oxygen and have a seizure, they could have a seizure in there. They take the oxygen off and they're back to normal. So it's not a damaging type of seizure, unless you just keep going and going. And you can drown from drinking too much water, but you have to do it on purpose, really, in a way. So you know, the clinics out there are very educated with this, and so as long as you had a medical professional involved, that's it. So you really think about it. You know, when you see these commercials about this new drug that's going to help you with, you know, incontinence or something, where are the warnings? You know, and I always love they save death to the last one.
Yeah.
Okay, and so yeah, it's and when you read the research and you see, you know, these are the warnings. You know, in a lot of cases, to me, it's over dramatized. So, because when you look at drugs, if you take the whole bottle, it could kill you. They don't put that on there. But when it comes to oxygen, they put it on there.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you take too much. And so I think that's the good news. The good news is it's very safe, very effective. I would say 90% of the studies at least recognize that it's safe and effective. So.
Yeah, well, like I say, I'm a believer.
Yeah, so I'm glad you're going to read The Oxygen Revolution. I think Hart's done a great job for people like us. Although you're more of a medical professional because you've studied it, and
Yeah.
you know, and I think you're gonna enjoy that. And there's some other good books out there. You know, there's like an encyclopedia on hyperbaric oxygen that covers nearly everything that's put out by some really bright people. I think that the authors from Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, I've learned a lot here lately about it. You know, you don't know that you know, and I looked online, and there's you know, a great guy from Israel who explains it very well, and he's even gone in depth to talk about, you know, childhood trauma, or just trauma in general, not maybe TBI or anything, but just the trauma like we see first responders is, you know, we see a lot of trauma, and that it damages your brain. You know, we have a lot of dark humor and that kind of thing. We try to cope with it, and we don't really seek. A lot of times they see seeking help as a sign of weakness, so they really don't want to go to a therapist or talk to anyone. And this is something that you can come do, and you know, there's no shame in it. You know, I mean, unless you got the hood on, and that's a little, you know, not somebody. You know, the hood's fine. You know, it's just you feel like you're in a spaceship. But I started wearing the mask, you know, and trying that out. But everybody's been very helpful. I mean, nobody's, you know, whatever I want to do, they're willing to help change everything out and all. But I just think it'd be a great thing for first responders too, because they're burnt out. You know, it'd be a great way to.
Yeah. I think that message needs to get out there, and so maybe you can help with that message.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to.
Yeah. Well, Ernie, it's a pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you
sir.
for coming in, and look forward to hearing back about, you know, we get to 40. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Thank you.
Great.